try to cover as much ground as possible. So how do we make sure that you don't create another bubble where everyone just becomes an entrepreneur? And you have sort of this gold rush mentality. And so we have herd-like behavior in all sorts of cases. We have herd-like behavior in people becoming entrepreneurs. And so I do think this is always, always somewhat of a concern. One of my friends I was talking to a few years ago was asking, so what do you plan to do in 5 or 10 years? And so, it's really clear, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And that's sort of like saying, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to be famous. You don't become an entrepreneur as a line item on a resume. You become an entrepreneur because there's an important problem that needs to be solved, and the best way to solve it is by starting a new company, because it cannot be solved within existing organizations. I try to surface the proper motives by one of the kinds of questions I've always found to be very instructive to ask people are sort of the prehistory questions. So when people are just starting a business, the prehistory questions would be like, how did you meet? How long have you been thinking about this? Tell me how this sort of came together. A bad answer to the prehistory question is, we met at a networking function a week ago, and we decided to both start a company. That is like saying, we met at the slot machines in Las Vegas, we decided to get married, you might hit the jackpot. It's probably just a bad idea. And the much better answer is, we've been friends for 3-4 years, we've been talking about this a lot, and we're really interested in this, where it's driven not by what the crowd is doing, but where it takes its bearings from some substantive area that you're really interested in. There are surprisingly few good answers to my contrarian question. It's always sort of a very tough one to answer. But I think sort of the category of answers that's at least better than average, and sort of gets you sort of into the A- category maybe, are ones where you acknowledge how your thinking is not that unusual, is maybe not that original. So it's something like, I want to do an education startup because education's important. That's like hyper conventional. Horrible answer. Almost all the things that are themes, I'm by the way very against. I think education startups are bad. Healthcare IT is bad. SaaS is bad. Big data, cloud computing, that's like totally fraudulent. I don't think anybody even knows what that means. And so the good answers are always sort of very idiosyncratic. But if you say, I'm going to start an education software, and I know that everyone's saying the exact same thing as I am, at that point you're already really far ahead. If you realize that you're not original at all, you are actually way ahead of a lot of other people. So a pretty good answer I got along these lines was that most investors always think you should try to buy stocks cheaply, but I think that with a lot of these tech companies, you want to buy the ones where things are the most frenzied, and you're just even more bullish than everybody else. And so you want to be contrarian in a bullish way, not in a bearish way. And in my experience, that actually there's a surprising amount of truth to that. The biggest miss I had was not investing in Facebook in the Series B round, which was probably the steepest up round of any company that I've been involved in the last 10 years. And so there is something about when there's real momentum in these companies, people often still underestimate the momentum. So I think that was sort of a very interesting sort of contrarian perspective. Yes, I think there's still enormous amount to do in the IT field. It's been the field that's seen the most progress in the last 40 years, and as a default, I would bet on that continuing.